Hi everyone, it's Ileana, and I have a Mother's Day card to share with you today. I made this one for my mom. The last card I made was for my mother-in-law. So this card, what I did was that I took a piece of the Arches watercolor, hot press watercolor paper, and I cut it into half and then cut it in half again. Um, I made it a little bit bigger so that I was able to adhere it down when I paint so that the edges don't curl up. I did add a couple of pencil lines so that I knew where the A2 card size would be. That way I'm not stamping too far to the edge. And I'd never used the Arches watercolor paper before. I took the online card class that Dawn Wosagel did, and she talked about this, so I thought I would give the paper a try. So I just bought one pad, and it is really awesome paper. Um, I've it just takes the color so well, and it really made watercoloring just so much easier. So I flipped my paper so that it would be vertical so that the long stem of this flower wouldn't be in the way. There is a little bit of texture on the watercolor paper, but not much, but I do want the dark image, so I like to overstamp anything that's in black. When I'm trying to figure out where to put my stamp, what I usually do is that I just imagine where I want the stamp to be and then figure out how can I get that stamp to work in the MISTI. And so that's why I rotate my paper quite a bit. I try not to move the stamps, um, but I just try to align them in a way where the MISTI will do what I want it to do instead of me moving things around, or I mean these stamps around. Now I'm going to be adding some clear embossing powder, and the reason why I did that was because I was too impatient to wait for the ink to dry, and I didn't want to zap it with my heat gun and then warp the paper. And I also thought that having that embossing ridge would help me with my watercoloring since I am just a beginner. I'm using the Ganzai Tombi watercolors, and the colors that I'd picked were, I think that's number 37. I just picked a little bit of that color up and put it on a palette, and then I just watered it down because I wanted it to be a little muted. I do want the flower with the leaf on it to be a little bit darker, so I go back and I add another layer. I want the other flowers to be a little bit lighter, and so I just added some more water to the pigment of the watercolor. And I forgot to erase the lines, and I remembered that if you trap the pencil lines under the watercolor that you can't erase them, so I went back and I erased them. I'm trying not to think about too much of how I'm watercoloring. I'm just putting my color down. I just decided just to try not to control it and just to let it be. And I did get some color where I didn't want it, and so I just picked it up with a dry um, a dry cloth. Now I'm adding more color to that flower, and I'm just going to spread it around a little bit. Then once that's done, I'm going to go back and touch up where I think it just needs a little bit more color. And the petals that have the lines on it, those are supposed to be darker. It's supposed to be more of a shadow effect, so I added a little bit more color to it. Now for the leaves, I'm using that was number 58 in the watercolor set. And I'm trying to just drop the pigment in the little stem because the stem is so tiny. And because it is embossed, it doesn't go outside of the lines. So I was really happy about that. And this video is really sped up, so you don't really see where my hand is shaking to color in those little spots. Okay, now that everything is dry, I'm going to paint the background, and I'm going to be using number 47, and I just really watered it down quite a bit because it is a dark brown. I'm just using a flat brush just to go around, and the paper is totally dry because this is probably the next day. I think I just did this in stages. I did attach, I forgot to mention, I did attach my watercolor paper to my Cricut mat. And the reason why I did that was because I didn't have very much room on the top and bottom to put tape down, but I didn't want those edges to curl up. And so this is a new Cricut mat, and so the cardstock, the watercolor paper did adhere to it well. And so the edges aren't curling up because the adhesive from the repositionable adhesive from the Cricut mat is keeping it from curling up. I had enough room on the side to side part of the cardstock so that I was able to run a little bit of tape along the edge. So I'm just adding a little bit more pigment to parts of the card so that it creates a little bit of interest. Now the sentiment I'm going to add is from the Altenew Penned Rose stamp set. And I'm just using 4 of my magnets to keep the edges of my watercolor paper as flat as possible. It's not perfectly flat, but it's just enough that it's distracting me, and I need to keep it flat so that I know my sentiment is straight. I'm taking the little grid um, on my transparency, and I'm just using that to help line up my sentiment. And it's not sitting on a line, but I can tell that it is as straight as possible, but I want to double check. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to stamp it with some memento ink just to see if it's straight on my grid line, and it was. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to use my VersaFine Black Onyx ink because I want to emboss it so it is the same as the flowers. And I'm double stamping it because I want it to be the same black intensity. And I wanted the mother to be as close to the stamp as possible, and that's why I stamped it separate so that I could scoot it down. And once again, I'm going to make sure that I have the position that I want. And by stamping on the grid paper, it really helps to see if it's as close as you want. Rather than stamping it on the card and wishing that it was a little closer, you can get that perfect positioning. So I'm going to double stamp it. I think I may even triple stamp it. I don't remember. But I want it to be nice and dark, and it is a little bit a thicker line. And once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and emboss it. I'm just going to add that same Ranger Clear Detail Embossing Powder to it. And I did check to make sure that the cardstock was totally dry before I did my embossing. Now, here's another tip. I've taken the little metal shim that you use on your Big Shot for, detail cutting, and I'm using that with my Misty magnets to keep my watercolor paper flat. It still has a little bit of a bow to it, and I didn't want to have it flopping all over the place, and so I'm just using the magnets so that it holds it in place. I'm adding some liquid pearls, and this is the rose gold, and I'm just adding it to the center of each flower. I wanted it to be a little dimensional, but I didn't want to add sequins to it. I thought the sequins would be a little too distracting, and I wanted it to be a little bit more elegant. I did trim the cardstock down using my stitched rectangles. And then what I'll do is after the liquid pearls dries, I will, oh, it's already attached to a card base. I thought I did it after, but looks like I'd already done it. So I was using the magnets to keep it flat. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed my watercoloring today. Be sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel and for more videos, and be sure to give it a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.